So welcome to Whiskey Provisioner. We are at the Wizard Academy. We're sitting inside of the residential area called Engelbrecht. We are not at West China Tea. West China Tea is in the process of moving from one location to another location. Because of permits and errors, there's been a gap. So they're going to be looking at secondary locations to do their business. So follow them on social media. We love Sohan, his entire crew, and the tea house. But today I had an appointment with Mr. Jason Sowder. And Mr. Jason Sowder is going to be proctoring one of the classes here. He is one of the educators at the Wizard Academy. There is a sommelier level
4.
4?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm one of the lucky ones that got to do that last year.
Cool. And the Somm level 3 is what's going on this week?
Yep, level 3 is this week, focusing on Scotch, Irish, and Japanese.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get involved in all of this?
Yeah, whiskey for me was a very strange thing. I didn't really find my exploration side of whiskey until about 2017. I was doing a lot of traveling and came across a whiskey bar that had a really great thing in Boston. It was called Citizen Pub, and it created this thing called the Whiskey Club.
Okay.
And what it was a giant library-looking card. And every time you'd come in and visit, you'd hand them your ID, and they'd go find your card. And what it had is on the front and back listed every whiskey they had.
Wow.
And the goal was you had to drink one of everything they had. There was no time limit. There was no cost for doing it. They said the goal is not to do it quickly or to force you to do this. It's to make you try things, to make you explore things you wouldn't normally try. And so once you complete one of everything, you became a member of the club and you got some perks and everything. But really that forced exploration of, we're trying Taiwanese rye and weird things I'd never heard of, and some things were wonderful and some things were awful. But that was the fun behind it, and I realized that it piqued the intellectual side of it, and I started looking for things, and then my team unfortunately got laid off about 6 months later. Which happens a lot in the consulting world. And so you just end up with downtime. And I came across these YouTube videos, and a lot of the stuff, the Whiskey Vault hadn't really even gotten started at that point. It was very at the beginning, but I found a lot of other things and came across Daniel and the start of the Whiskey Vault and Whiskey Tribe and got involved with them. But it wasn't until 2019 when the distillery opened here on campus with Crowded Barrel. I came for it and wanted to figure out if you meet a lot of people online and you're trying to figure out, are these really my people? Is this what I think it is? And came and fell in love with the campus and the people and the mission of the School of Wizard Academy and realized that, these are kind of my people. And so signed up for Somm Level 1 on the spot and created my own company called the Proof LLC. Up in Detroit, Michigan, where I do consulting, events, and a lot of education.
Wow, that's around the same time that I started. It was December of 2018 that they hired me and Madison and a few of us original bartenders for the tasting room. Daniel and Emma were the two bartenders prior to that, but. One of the things that I found out, even being 30 years in food and beverage and restaurants and bars and managing restaurants and bars, there was still so much that I didn't know. And I was actually afraid of the high proof bourbon in the interview that they put in front of me. And it was like one of those light switch moments. It's like, oh, just because it's high proof doesn't mean it's going to blow your palate out, and it's not going. There can be other flavors that have not been there, and so that was another whole rabbit hole. I ended up getting a part-time job at a liquor store. So it's like, what are people coming to Crowded Barrel? They're looking for one thing. They have the certain type of nerd vibe, but when you go into the liquor store, they're looking for other things. And there's also other spirits, and you brought one of those other spirits. Tell us what you have here.
Yeah, I brought in, so being a guy from Michigan in the Detroit area, this is Norton Aquavit. It is made in the Detroit area in the style of the Scandinavian spirit. So So aquavit, for anybody that doesn't know, gin is the requirement is the predominant botanical has to be juniper, whereas according to the EU, the dominant botanicals of aquavit have to be dill and or caraway. Now it has up to 10 different botanicals in this one. I didn't know what aquavit was, and went to an event in Detroit that was sponsored by them, and it was a Scandinavian crawfish boil of all things. Now, having grown up in the South, I knew what crawfish boils were, and so I was like, I have no idea what a Scandinavian one is, though. So I go to it, and it was this just delightful springtime festival that they kind of do. But it was sponsored by Norden, and they served cocktails and had neat pours. And I went from not knowing anything to being a fanboy for that company and the quality things they're doing. And so I brought their flagship product with me, just because it's one of those things that I really do like to get their name out there to everyone, as something that I think whiskey drinkers can drink it, other spirit drinkers can do it. It is soft and simple enough that wine and beer drinkers are going to enjoy it. It makes amazing cocktails drinking it neat. It really is kind of this Goldilocks product, and so I just take it with me everywhere I can to get people to drink more of it.
And it's another word that means water of life.
Yes.
So aquavit is one. You've got eau de vie is another. You've got whiskaba, which is another. They all mean water of life, which is the drinks, the ambrosia of the gods, essentially. So this is, I'm just can't get my head past crawfish and Scandinavian crawfish. Like, are they like loading it up with dill?
It was dill.
Cream?
Yeah, dill and creme fraiche, and it went together beautifully, and it created these neat things. But it's like, they apparently it is a normal festival in Scandinavia to do these crawfish boils with their version of their flavor profile. And so this is, of course, the dill is going to pair with dill. And so it automatically it works with itself. And so it was, we had our own version of a mule, where they're pairing it with some elderflower liqueur, and instead of citrus, you put fresh cucumber slices in it.
Oh.
And so everything just emphasizes the different botanicals, because even though juniper is in here, it is well played down, just adding some earthy and some herbal notes rather than being the main star like you would with gin.
Interesting. So this is coming from Denmark, or where, Sweden?
No, Detroit.
Detroit.
At last I knew, he was renting one of the other distilleries in the area, leasing it during their off hours, because the way they're able to do it is, making aquavit is a fairly fast thing because you're not having to age it. Putting it through the botanical basket. I believe this is a Michigan corn-based spirit, base spirit, and then putting it through the botanicals. And I believe he's doing it as a pot still style.
Corn spirit, pot still, and then is it a gin basket? Because there's a number of ways to infuse the different. You can put it in the boiling in the pot. You can put like a basket inside of the middle of the still.
Yeah, I believe this one is a basket, but I don't know for the 100% if that's what it was doing it.
Yeah, you can tell that it's absolutely clear, so they aren't doing any like
compound.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not adding the flavors after the alcohol has been distilled. But yeah, so let's try this out and see what it's like. Not whiskey, aquavit, and it's made in Detroit. So this is going to be an interesting experiment. I am expecting some gin-like qualities. Ooh, it is bright.
Yeah, very citrus forward. You've got clementine orange peels. You've got sage in there. You have sumac.
Mm-hmm. The citrus comes off really bright on the beginning, but you get the other herbs and the herbal qualities coming in the background.
Yeah, I think it even. He lists most of them. So sumac, clementine, caraway, orris, sage, dill, juniper, angelica root, anise, and coriander.
And a lot of those are baking type of spices as well. And caraway, I've used that before.
Yeah, there's almost aspects that you can see how a rye drinker would really enjoy something like this.
Yeah, especially the anise and coriander is another one of those flavors. Coriander is the seed as opposed to the.
Yep.
Unless you're British, then you're going to call the green cilantro a coriander. You know, we drink a lot of high proof spirits. And it's interesting. Oh, it's 45.
Yeah.
Wow. Honestly, that tastes very, very mild.
Yeah. This is one of the things is not only in flavor, but in the way that alcohol actually hits you. And I have got to think that as part of that, it's some of the oils from what's coming in there is helping kind of do that protective coating. It's making it a little viscous. You can see even how it's just coating the glass. But all of that, you know, at a 45%, doesn't drink like it at all, and is even though this is something that you can see how it's gonna stand up in a cocktail, but you can sit around and drink it neat or throw it on an ice cube, and it's just gonna be a pleasant, enjoyable experience.
So the way that you experience this bar is the way that I enjoy experiencing the whiskey vault, especially after a graduation. I was here last Wednesday, and there were a lot of different people with bringing in spirits from their own areas. From Arizona, we got to try some blue corn and red corn bourbons from Arizona, and it's fun when somebody else points you to something. Like this is a way of trying things. Because a lot of times when you're in the liquor store and you're looking, and I see a lot of people in liquor stores looking for things, and they're often drawn back to what they already know. And so anything new on the shelf, it's really hard for them to get pointed to it. What was your advice to finding new things?
Yeah, unfortunately, I think whiskey marketing in general and advertising tends to be some of the worst marketing and advertising of any industry. Too many times they just fall back on this is the small batch, handcrafted, grain to glass nonsense, because it doesn't tell you anything. And it doesn't tell you why you should care that company exists and what it has to offer and what might be different about it, or why they did it the way they did it. The ones that can really tell the story about why you should care, and that's why it's so important to have other people that will tell that story for them.
Right.
People who have tried it, to have people that have become fans of it, and say, "Hey, I have to tell you about this place, these people, this why they cared or why I started caring." And so, because of that, when you're looking for things, is finding anything that people get excited about when they talk about it, whether it's the person working at the liquor store or it's someone on social media. When people get excited about it, there's a reason, whether it's because they're doing something nerdy, like you were mentioning, using different grains or doing an interesting process, or it's just that the people, the culture, the vibe of it excites them and they feel like, yeah, this is mine.
Yeah.
And that sense of belonging. And so finding one of those things is, don't pay attention to what's on the label most of the time, and instead just ask people and see what it is, and not even so much what they say, but how they say it.
Right, and I'm also excited about a lot of the distilleries that are like farmer-owned, farm-raised. We've got some interesting things that we might be able to share a little later on today that Corey ended up sourcing from Wilson Valley Mercantile. He got a rye whiskey that is a really interesting product. But I love that he's a fifth generation family farmer, and we were able to visit and see all of his process. In terms of marketing, there are a lot of regulations in the liquor industry. So how people sell things to people is through brand name recognition. A lot of the big companies, they've already got that brand name recognition. Breaking in as a smaller producer, how does this company create a culture or create a space on the shelf?
And I mean that's to your point is it is one of those things where you have to come up with a way to get people curious about you, for some reason give you one chance of something. And so like them sponsoring a restaurant that was doing a Scandinavian crawfish boil, that's an opportunity they could go in there and get people to give you a try that they would never otherwise do. And it really is one of those things where. Unfortunately, because of the price of spirits and because there are so many things on the shelf, really you do need to find a way to make it easier to give you one try. Whether that's at the bar or they're selling products that are smaller in size, or sponsoring and working with events. Being able to get out there and really stand behind those things are to your point, is all of your big brands already own the major chains of communication. They already sponsor most of the things that they throw up a banner.
Right.
Because they don't have to give you a message, they just have to give you their name.
Right.
Whereas with other smaller craft, if you give them a name, they don't know what it is.
Right.
And so you have to tell them your story. Somehow you have to get your story across, because that's the only way they're going to remember you.
Yeah.
And focusing on that story is one of the things that, that's why we always make the joke that no one cares about vodka. And it's just because, well, no one's sitting around telling the story about the ancient recipe from 4 generations and pre-prohibition of whatever, of a vodka. And we have an amazing story in whiskey and things like in craft spirits from other cultures that carry with them so much more weight and story that carries with them. And then every time you have a sip of that, you feel like you're sharing in that. And that sense of, it allows you to create a community that doesn't actually have to be near each other. So we can all be part of that community, whether we're there or not. I don't have to ever visit Scandinavia to feel like I know what it's like to sit around the kitchen table and share a pour.
Now this here, how do they actually say to enjoy aquavit? Is it an aperitif before dinner? Is it a digestif? Is it something for after dinner? Does it go into a cocktail of some sort, or what is traditional?
So there are different styles of classic aquavit. So this is called table style. The taffel portion that means table. And so by taffel style, traditional botanical, original taffel style, that means table. Keep this on the kitchen table. It can be drunk at any time in any way. There are other styles. If you go classic aquavits, they tend to be simpler in this fact that they've been barrel rested for longer, have gotten smoother, and are more traditional in that style. Whereas this goes perfectly as anything. And so throughout that meal where they were the sponsor, they were going through and giving us in different ways. Here's a neat pour to try. Here's a cocktail that we've made for you ahead of time. And then they even had a cocktail we made for us, where they were using, like, the thickening agent was snow peas. Right. And so you were actually muddling the snow peas in there to get this thickening liquid out of it. So that would actually become the binding agent for your cocktail. And so you can mix and match how they wanted to come up with the most flexible of the styles. But if you go out and you just get an aquavit, most of those are not going to do as well in cocktails. It's more going to be as sipped on its own, like an after dinner beverage or before dinner, because they are just so smooth and rounded off from all that time in the barrel.
Cool. And there's something that I've been seeing recently. We were talking about Sotal and tequila and mezcals, and resting the spirit after it's distilled in glass, in clay, in stainless steel. Is that part of the process with the aquavit? Are they resting it so that the spirit comes together, or are they bottling it fairly immediately?
Depending on their style, I know they have various things. So they've expanded just beyond this style they've done a barrel rested one, which is put in a used bourbon barrel for about 7 months. They have a version that they make every year in October along with a charity for breast cancer awareness, using hibiscus, rose petals, strawberries, and rhubarb.
Oh, wow.
and to make a pink aquavit that is actually slightly sweetened, so it almost becomes a liqueur, like an after-dinner drink. And then they've done some other ones that have come out with a dill-heavy expression and a few other ones. And so I know they've varied which ones have been rested, which ones have been put in a barrel versus a thing, and it depends on their actual style and what that flavor is. For this one, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe they're just going directly into the bottle with this one.
Cool. Yeah, there's a lot to these processes that people like when you start in the education part of it. We throw around terms like pot still, column still. Like that's it. There's one. You're either one or the other. But then when you start seeing the variations in the different types of column stills and continuous stills and the way that they work, and sometimes they'll start off, they'll do their stripping run on one piece of equipment, they'll do their spirit run on another piece of equipment. The more you get into the weeds, the more you learn you don't know everything. So my thought is bring in multiple people so I can learn a lot of the things that I don't know about different spirits and discover brand new things. So honestly, when you said aquavit, my mind went to eau de vie. And so it's like, oh, we're going to talk about brandies, and and it's like, and that's not it at all.
No.
So it's very easy for your brain to get messed up with what it is that you're learning, what you're talking about.
Yeah, getting into some of the local, less well-known spirits of various countries is really an amazing thing, because there are so many of these smaller styles that, although they have things in common with the big names, do have things like, even you said, even if it's pot still. Well, if they use different size pot stills, if they use different shape pot stills, if they're putting things in combination, is it multiple pot stills that they're blending together to get various things, like they do with a lot of Japanese whiskeys? That because each one of them, they're going to be pulling off a different flavor profile. All of these things are interesting, and especially the ones that have kind of lasted. And still it made it through all of the modernization of the world. And okay, we didn't get rid of this for gin. Even though gin is much bigger and much more popular and much more available, they kept this because this was their story and their speak and their particular way of doing things. And so now it's really fun to the day and age we live in, how much we have access to that no one else in a generation before would have ever been able to try these things.
Yeah, going back to what you were saying earlier, that he's using somebody else's distillery when they're not actively operating. This is something that we see a lot, where there are distilleries where other products are also being made there. I saw this happening when I was in Kentucky at the Spirit of Kentucky, where there were contract distilling going on at the distillery. They were doing packaging and bottling for another company at that distillery. So this is an interesting way to start a brand, and the equipment costs are no joke.
Yeah, and especially since if you're not at the place where you need to be running that constantly, so they can go in, they've got a much bigger probably still setup than they would do if they went off and actually bought one. They probably have to buy a much smaller still, and then all of a sudden you have to wonder, what does that do to the flavor profile? If you go from this larger still to now a smaller one, have you changed it? Have you increased the heat? And so you've gotten new flavors you didn't account for, whereas he just needs a larger still, and he just needs it every once in a while, and runs that run. And so anytime you would adjust anything, he'd have to go in there most likely and adjust the recipe to figure out how to make the thing taste the same, even though now he's going to use different equipment. And that may work, it may not. You might not even be able to replicate it, depending on what the constraints are.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible, the way that people are innovating like that, and especially with a spirit that is a small, minor variant. You're not going to have large distribution. You're not going to. You might end up in that city with a few liquor stores that are interested in an off spirit, a spirit that's not normal. In that category, it's going to end up, probably over by the gins or over by the brandies in a little slot all of its own.
Right.
I remember Davin Topol's Totem, And when I found out that that's just something that he made, it was off in the mezcal section. And so the real spirits, they had malts in the American whiskey side, and they had, so if you're doing multiple spirits and they're putting you in different parts of the store, it's different than having one shelf dedicated to 5 kinds of bourbon or 5 kinds of single malts. It's a little more difficult to get a smaller brand like this up and running.
Yeah, and then one of the things now they're doing is really that, and Norton's taking advantage of this, as they try and increase their distribution, they really worked hard early to find an online company to help them distribute. So they're available. You can go on their website. They have a third-party vendor, I believe, that's handling all their distribution and for online sales. But those kinds of things really do make that more accessible, because even if they can't get into your state or you can't find them in your state, because even in Michigan, even being a Michigan spirit in Michigan, because it is such a niche product,
Right.
there are tons of stores that aren't going to carry that.
Yeah.
Because if you've only got X number of spaces, you're going to do it for the things that are moving quickly. And so even in that state, you have to go search for it and remember which stores are the ones that not only would carry something like this, but other spirits that are less well known, that may be more niche or more experimental. And so those become your favorite stores really quickly, just because that's where you go when you want to try something.
Right.
And there are a lot of other stores you go when you're just going to get your staples.
Yeah, so you would actually have to, like you said, look for those types of communities, those types of bars that they're naturally doing this type of food, and they're bringing in those types of cultures. You're more likely to sell it. When I'm setting up a bar, they often mention something called the 100-bottle bar, and it's a way of managing inventory. You don't need a whole bunch of unwieldy things, bottles that are just sitting there gathering dust.
Yeah.
So it's tough to break into, because at that point it's just all name brand recognition. What are people walking in here asking for? And asking for Aquavit is a difficult.
Probably, yeah. It's probably maybe a bar has gotten 2 of those requests.
Yeah.
And that's a shame, because it like so many of those spirits, and so many, even just if you stay inside whiskey, there's so many whiskeys that don't get tried because
Right.
people don't even know
Yeah.
to be able to ask for them or try them. And that becomes one of the biggest things that can kill a craft distillery, is just people not giving them a chance because they don't even know they exist.
So you brought a couple more spirits
Yep.
to talk about. So I think this is a great thing. Do you want to share any more about this product and let people know what it is, what it's called, where to find it?
Yep, Norton Aquavit out of Detroit, Michigan. You can go on nortonaquavit.com. You can order from them. They do have several also special releases right now. I think they're just announcing right now they're doing sales for something they have done together with a Polish museum, a fundraiser for them that's going to be porter cask finished Aquavit. And so the pre-sales are on right now for that, and so go check them out. They've got shipping in most states, and they're just a wonderful product. Give them a chance.
Do you have any social media things that we should be following?
I am theproofllc.com, and then all Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, etc. You can find me on all of those.
And if you ever happen to be at the Wizard Academy taking a class, you're going to be seeing Jason here, especially if you join one of the whiskey marketing school classes.
Yeah, the most important thing for the Whiskey Marketing School has been finding our tribe. And if you're one of our people, we want to make sure you're involved.
Cool. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back with another episode with Jason talking about another spirit. Cheers, y'all.